Living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
Each year, hundreds of thousands of adults over 60 are abused, neglected, or financially exploited, but only one victim in 14 comes forward because many are unable, embarrassed, or afraid to report they've been violated. Abusers can be a child, a sibling, a caregiver, a friend, but they all succeed in making their victims feel less than whole. Learn to spot, stop, and report elder abuse on this edition of Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm your host, Beth Brown. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Our first guest this morning is Michael Hagenlock with Adult Protective Services. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Can you start out just by talking to us a little bit about what exactly is considered a vulnerable adult or that's eligible for Adult Protective Services?
Sure. Yeah. For a vulnerable adult, what we consider a vulnerable adult is somebody who's age 60 or older, or they have some form of physical or mental disability or intellectual disability. That's all the criterion is. There's no other things. You don't have to be frail or sick or anything like that. If you're in one of those categories, that's what makes you eligible for us to be activated and come out and see you.
Okay, so give us an overview. What exactly does Adult Protective Services do?
Sure. Adult Protective Services, what our job to do is to investigate abuse, neglect, or exploitation of our vulnerable adults. So generally what will happen at that point is if somebody gives us a call, whether it's an individual or a facility, anybody can call us. And they'll call us, tell us what's going on, and whether it's abuse, neglect, or exploitation, then we'll send one of our investigators out, and they'll go meet with the victim and talk to them and try to understand the story and start the investigation at that point. And during that time, if we identify potential services that might be helpful for them, or they tell us that there's things that they need that would be helpful for them, because the whole idea is to keep folks safely in their home, we'll help them identify community services that they could access, and we'll help facilitate that.
Okay, great. And can that person refuse your services or your assistance?
Absolutely. Everything here with Adult Protective Services, and that's one of these big differences with us with Adult Protective Services, is as an adult you have an autonomy, you have the ability to make your own decision. So as long as we believe that you have the capacity to make your own decisions, be it right, good, bad, or indifferent, we're going to listen to you. It doesn't mean our investigation's over, but if the person says, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want you coming to my house, or I don't want these services, that's fine. We'll honor that request. We'll continue our investigation, but we'll honor their request.
Okay. Is there a more common form of abuse that you see?
The most common form of abuse is self-neglect, believe it or not. And from self-neglect, and self-neglect is where the person themselves aren't able to care for themselves, take their medications, take care of their personal hygiene, their meals, these kinds of things that we would consider the basic needs being met, and they're unable to do it for themselves. Oftentimes it's not taking their medications properly or good nutrition. The homes become unsanitary or unsafe, those kinds of things. Majority, about 46% of our calls are for self-neglect. And so we'll go in and talk with them and identify their needs, and then we'll try to get community services involved to help them rectify the situation or get with a doctor or whatever their needs are to help them. That's our most common one.
Okay, so when you say you get calls for self-neglect, what do you mean by that? Who's calling you for?
Yeah, what we mean by that is that it could be anybody. It could be family. It could be the doctor's office himself when they came in and seen the person. It could be the neighbor across the street. Anybody that's come in contact with them. It could be the mailman. It even could be EMTs, the police officers. All of those folks, they're all mandated reporters, so they're required to call if they believe that somebody's at risk.
Okay.
And so that's the important part, is that it can be anybody. It's no one particular individual. And we tell everyone just to call our toll-free number out there, and that'll get one of our investigators to come out within a few days to help out.
Great. Can you talk about some of the other forms of abuse that you see?
Absolutely. One of the other forms of abuse, and the one that you might hear a lot about right now, is exploitation. There's a lot of different scams that are going on out there, and most of us are being told a lot about scams. Exploitation is a little different part. Exploitation isn't necessarily a scam. It's somebody that has taken advantage of the vulnerable adult financially.
Okay.
They've taken over their bank accounts, they've maybe taken over their home, or they're offering to do services and not providing those services but collecting the money. The one thing that most people believe is that this is a lot of stranger activity. This is family we're talking about. The majority of all of our what we call perpetrators, the person doing the act, is actually family members and taking advantage of mom or dad or the grandparents and their goodwill. They're horrendous. They're cases where they take advantage of them financially, which is devastating and which creates a lot of shame and anxiety, and therefore the vulnerable adult doesn't want to report it. And it can be devastating, and it actually causes a problem with their health. And they can end up dying sooner because of this exploitation. And then we have, of course, the others of physical abuse, where somebody is physically abusing them, or another category is what we call neglect. And that's where somebody has agreed to take care of somebody, be it caretaker, whether it's a paid caretaker or another family member, but they have made either a verbal or a paper contract that says, I will take care of you, I will help you. And when they've said that and they're going to do that, but then they fail to do it, that's what we consider neglect, because you've taken on an obligation to care for somebody.
Okay. So if I suspect abuse or neglect or exploitation, anything like that is going on, where should I turn? What are my options there?
Yeah, you have several options where you can turn to. And the first one, of course, is you can definitely call us on our toll-free number, which is 844-277-9300.
Okay.
And that'll get you in contact with somebody right away, and they'll talk to you, and they may transfer you to that community investigator, and they'll take the rest of your information. Another way is through our website, which is www.aps.mt.gov. And you can go right on there, you can find our online reporting, it can be confidential. We do not ever divulge the reporter, that's one thing we keep confidential. And so we encourage people either way to make those calls or get online, make the report to us. They don't have to have proof. All you have to do is just believe it's happening, give us a call, and we will come and we'll start working it to see if, in fact, if there's a problem or an issue.
Okay. All right, Mike, unfortunately, that's all the time we have, so we're going to need to stop there, but thanks so much for all your information about what Adult Protective Services does. Elder abuse must be reported before it can be investigated, and it must be investigated before it can be prosecuted. Many victims are embarrassed, fearful, or unaware they can do anything to change their situation, but it can't be stopped. Coming up next, we'll talk with those who investigate physical abuse and financial exploitation. Stay with us.